Today we're going over Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. If you're new here, welcome to Heart of a Halfling, where we talk about Lord of the Rings and do some Lord of the Ring things. So let's get started. Our main character for this section is Sauron, once a Maiar under Aule, but soon was corrupted by Melkor and became his most favored servant and his second in command. But with the fall and banishment of Morgoth into the void, Sauron now goes to Eowyn, asks for pardon, and it's believed that he wanted this genuinely, that he really was sorry for his deeds. But Eowyn says because they're both Maiar, he's unable to give him that pardon, and that he must go before the Valar and gain Manwë's forgiveness. Well, Sauron is both humiliated and prideful. He doesn't want to go before the Valar and possibly have to serve many years of punishment. So instead, he goes into Middle-earth in hiding. Now, during the Great Battle, or the War of Wrath, the land of Silmarillion is changed quite a bit. And the region of Osirion now becomes Lindon. And here, Gil-galad decides to reside, as well as Elrond. Now, after the War of Wrath, the River Lune becomes Gulf Lune, and this area becomes known as Lindon. And after the fall of Numenor and the destruction of everything, this area is also known as the Grey Havens, and it's from this gulf and port that the elves will take to go down the straight road to Valinor. Now, with the change of the land and everything, the arid Lindon, or the Blue Mountains, the gap in them becomes larger, and some of the elves decide to go east and create kingdoms with the Sylvan elves that resided there. Now, as a quick recap, back when the elves awoke in Cúraivenin, some of the elves decided that they wanted to go west, but some just wanted to remain where they were. These were the Sylvan elves or the Avardi elves. And so now the elves of Beleriand are coming in and making kingdoms with these elves. And these groups of kingdoms become close with the dwarves of Moria. Now, Celebrimbor is the son of Cúraivenin, and back when Cúraivenin and his brother were sent away from Nargothrond, Celebrimbor was one who decided to stay in Nargothrond and estrange himself from his father. So now Celebrimbor is becoming close with the dwarves and learning from them, and becomes a great jewelsmith. Now, during this time, Middle-earth is in somewhat of a state of peace, despite the land being savage and desolate. Now, Sauron, he finds that men are much easier to corrupt. And during his travels through Middle-earth, he is corrupting men and trying to persuade elves to join him. And in doing this, he gives out many gifts, teaches them, is very cunning and kind to the elves and men. However, he stays away from Lindon because he is quite afraid of Gil-galad. And he begins to spread rumors about Gil-galad that basically he's choosing to remain in Lindon. He's not wanting to come and share his gifts and knowledge with all the other elves. And so Sauron is planting these seeds of deceit to try and get the elves away from Gil-galad. And he gains the name Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. And most of the elves of Eregion, the region of Eregion, welcome him, and they're happy to have him. Now, Sauron is also teaching craftsmen and smiths how to create rings of power. And here he secretly makes the One Ring to rule all of the other lesser rings. Now, it wasn't uncommon for the elves at this time to create lesser rings. In fact, it's assumed that Gandalf most likely believed that the ring that Bilbo found was just one of these lesser rings, one of these magical rings that just maybe granted him invisibility. So it wasn't uncommon to have these lesser rings at this time. And Sauron, with his one ring, puts all of his strength and will into it so that when he wears the ring, he can see all those that are wearing their rings of power and is able to corrupt them. Well, as soon as he's able to do this, the elves quickly realize that Sauron is watching them, and they all remove their rings. This infuriates Sauron, and he wages war on them and begins to try and take up all of the rings of power that he can find. The elves are able to escape with 3 of their rings. We have Narya, the ring of fire, Nenya, the ring of water, and Vilya, the ring of air. These are the most powerful rings outside of the One Ring. Here, the elves are able to keep the rings hidden from Sauron, and they remain untouched by him. Celebrimbor is the only one to have ever touched these rings, and so they are untouched by Sauron, and he hasn't been able to corrupt them. Now, at this time, Elrond finds Rivendell, and in the book, it's called Imladris. And Sauron is still waging war on the elves. And Eregion is destroyed during this time. Celebrimbor is killed. And Sauron is collecting all of the remaining rings of power. And he gives out 9 to men and 7 to dwarves. Now, dwarves made by Aule are very stubborn and resistant to Morgoth and therefore Sauron. And Sauron is unable to corrupt the dwarves. However, the rings amplify their greed, it seems, and the dwarves begin to mine more, dig more, accumulate more treasures, and they're gaining these huge hoards of gold, and this attracts the dragons. And out of the 7 rings, only 3 remain, and it's believed that the other 4 have been devoured by dragons. Now, for men, they were much easier for Sauron to control, and they took the rings, they gained glory and wealth, an unending life. However, they were also able to be controlled by Sauron, and over time, they became invisible to everyone except for the one wearing the one ring. These become our Nazgul, the ring wraiths, and are the most dangerous of the servants of Sauron. Sauron now wants to become master of Middle-earth, right? He wants to become king over everything. And he causes the fall of Numenor. And he now is gathering up all of Morgoth's old servants and creating this group of evil servants to create a force and fear in Middle-earth. And this now begins the Black Years. Many elves are killed, and many also flee from Middle-earth and go to Valinor. Now, Gil-galad is able to maintain control of Lindon, and with the help of the Númenóreans, is able to keep Sauron at bay for a bit. But the men are building stone walls, building towers, and are treating Sauron as a king or a god. Now, in Akalabeth, we learned that Sauron gives himself up to the Númenóreans. It's taken hostage, and after 3 years, he becomes a close counsel to Ar-Pharazôn, and here we begin to see his part in the fall of Númenor. So when Sauron's physical form is destroyed in the fall of Númenor, his spirit flees back to Mordor. And he learns that during his time away, Gil-galad has grown in strength and power, and now controls a good portion of the north and west parts of Middle-earth. And Sauron now is pulling back all his forces back to Mordor and is planning for war. At this time, Elendil, Isildur, and Anarion, their ships are now falling onto Middle-earth. Elendil's ship comes to Lindon, and here he leads the people and establishes a new kingdom in Eriador named Anor. And here he begins to build cities and towers, and the ships of Isildur and Anarion, they fall south and are near the river Anduin, and here they begin to establish the kingdom of Gondor. Now the brothers build the city of Osgiliath and the towers Minas Ithil, which is where Isildur lies, and Minas Anor, which is where Anarion resides. And here they rule together. And the brothers plant the seed of the white tree of Nimloth in Minas Ithil, and they have 7 stones, and they give out these stones to Elendil, Anarion, and Isildur. The 7 stones are divided among the 3, and these kind of allow the 3 to see what's going on within their kingdoms and be able to protect their land from the enemies. And it says that Elendil often would visit one of the seeing stones in Emin Beraid. And it's believed that from this point that he could see Tol Eressëa, where the Master Stone resides. And these stones were gifts from the elves to Amandil, and they are called the Palantiri. Now, years after finding Arnor and Gondor, Sauron is taking on his terrible and frightening form, the form that we're all more aware of, and he's preparing war against men and elves. And many of the Númenóreans who were in Middle-earth at the destruction of Númenor still follow Sauron. And Sauron is able to take over Minas Ithil, and he destroys the White Tree. However, Isildur is able to escape down the river Anduin with his wife and sons, and is carrying a seedling from the White Tree, and is still able to protect the tree. And now, Isildur is trying to find Elendil while Anarion is defending Osgiliath. Now, Elendil and Gil-galad are wanting to unite everybody to fight against Sauron. And here we get the famous Last Alliance. And traveling east, they go to Rivendell, to Imladris. And we have this huge army of elves and men coming together. And from here, they march to Dagorland, where they fight and meet Sauron. And this is on the plains in front of the Black Gates of Mordor. And it says that all living creatures in Middle-earth are divided, that birds and beasts are divided, that men are divided, that there are some dwarves that take part in this fight as well, but elves will not be separated, that they are all joined together under the leadership of Gil-galad and Elendil. And this group is taking the victory because many of the orcs are afraid of Gil-galad's spear, Aglos, and of Elendil's sword, Narsil. And they're able to enter into Mordor and surround Barad-dûr, surround Sauron's tower. And the siege of Barad-dûr lasts for 7 years, and the Last Alliance suffers many great losses, including the death of Anarion. However, finally, Sauron leaves his tower and kills both Gil-galad and Elendil. Narsil here is broken, and Isildur takes the shards of Narsil and cuts off the one ring from Sauron's hand. And now Sauron is defeated. He leaves his physical form and his spirit flees, and he's unable to take on his physical form for many years. So now Sauron is defeated, and the third age of the world now begins. His servants are scattered everywhere. They're not completely destroyed, they're just scattered and separated. Some of the men, it says that they turn from evil and they follow Elendil, while others continue to serve under Sauron. Now we have the Dunedain, the Númenóreans, setting guard on the land of Mordor. Though it does say that no one's able to live there because it's so uninhabitable, that the Mount Doom, or Orodruin, is building up so much smoke and ash that nobody can actually live there. But now we have the last alliance dispersing, departing, and separating, kind of all going their own ways. And it says that no host has ever been in the likeness of the last alliance, and that after this, men and elves sort of estranged themselves from each other. So now the One Ring disappears, right? So Isildur refuses to give the ring to Elrond and Círdan, who want to destroy it in Mount Doom. However, Isildur believes that it's his ring, that he deserves the ring as compensation for the death of his father and brother. And he holds on to the ring. He keeps it. And here he goes and plants the white tree, the seedling that he saved. He goes and plants it in Minas Anor. And he places Menelil, Anardion's son, in charge of Gondor. And he is going to go to Anor and take control over there. And on his way, he's ambushed by orcs. And most of his people that were following him are killed, including his 3 eldest sons, but his wife and youngest son, Valandil, remain safe in Rivendell in Imladris. Isildur is able to escape from the orcs, but the ring betrays him, and it slips off his finger, revealing himself to the orcs, and the orcs are able to kill him. We are informed also that the One Ring kind of aided Isildur in hiding, but the orcs were able to find him through smell. So during this ambush, we have 3 of his people that are able to escape, and they bring the shards of Narsil to Valandil in Rivendell. And Elrond here tells that Narsil will never be reforged until we have the One Ring again, until the One Ring is found and Sauron returns. Now Valandil becomes king of Arnor, but it says that there's not a lot of men at this point, not a lot of Númenóreans, Dunedain, and that many of them kind of separated and are guarding some of the cities that Elendil had built. And in the time of the 7th king after Valandil, the men of Númenor are so divided that they're all just kind of picked off by the enemies, and that only a few now of the Dunedain remain, and most of them are sort of forgotten about, and that only in Rivendell with Elrond are they remembered. And the line of Isildur still continues, and the shards of Narsil remain and are being passed down each generation. Gondor now resembles more of the height and magnificence of Númenor, and Minas Anor now has a large white tower built on it. It looks out onto the land, looks towards Barad-dûr, towards Mordor, and is now this beacon of hope, I guess. And it's named Minas Tirith. However, Menelil, his line dies out by a plague. It says that his line began to mingle with the line of men, so much so that the Dunedain in them kind of fades out, and now they're susceptible to illness, and illness destroys this line. So Gondor now is abandoned. Minas Ithil and the forts around the border of Gondor are left open for the attack of Sauron, and Sauron does. He attacks on Minas Ithil and now gains control of it and is waging war against Minas Anor, now Minas Tirith, where a few of the Númenóreans remain to protect the west. Minas Tirith is able to survive after the death of Irnor, the last king of Gondor. It says that he fights against the Ringwraiths single-handedly in single combat. He fights against them, but is eventually captured. And now the stewards of Gondor are in control and taking over in the absence of the kings. Now, we see the Rohirrim arriving to live in Rohan, and they're now aiding Minas Tirith in the fight against Sauron. The north, it says that here resides an ancient enemy of Sauron, and that the Ringwraiths refuse to cross the river and leave the city after the death of Ainur. It's really unsure who that ancient enemy is, but it just says that the Ringwraiths refused to go north. So after Gil-galad has died in the fight against Sauron, Rivendell becomes this place of refuge for the weary and oppressed. And here the heirs of Isildur remain and they live. Elrond believes that someone in the line of Isildur will have an important fate. We also have the Grey Havens remaining as a refuge under the rule of Círdan. And the elves never speak of the three rings of power. We know that Vilya is given to Elrond and is helping keep Rivendell alive, I guess, and flourishing. And we know that Galadriel has Nenya in Lothlorien. Now, only Elrond, Galadriel, and Círdan know who has Narya. So after the fall of Sauron, the rings are put to work. They're now preserving Rivendell and Lothlorien and are protecting them from the griefs of time. And it says that the elves are aware that if Sauron ever finds the One Ring, that either with obtaining the One Ring or destroying the ring will mean that the elven rings will also be destroyed and that the time of elves will fade and will now become the dominion of men in Middle-earth. So we know that with the One Ring, the 9 rings, and the 7 rings of dwarves, and with the 3 elven rings, that with all of them destroyed or fading, that this will end the 3rd age of Middle-earth. And so the years between are now becoming the fading years, when elves, orcs, dragons, dwarves are still in Middle-earth, but we're now beginning to approach the time of the dominion of men. Now, during this time, we see Sauron rising in Mirkwood. At first, this land is called the Greenwood the Great, and it's this large, beautiful forest. However, with the introduction of this evil, because at first it's unsure that it's Sauron, some believe that maybe it's the Nazgul taking over, but either way, with the interference of this evil nature, the Greenwoods now become Mirkwood, and it's covered in darkness. Evil creatures reside here, and the king Thranduil is able to use his people to defend the forest for as long as they can. Now, at this point, they're not entirely sure if it's Sauron. There's some belief that maybe it's a Nazgul, but either way, there is a sorcerer here called the Sorcerer of Dol Guldur. Now, with this sorcerer, we also have the introduction of the Istari, of the wizards. And only Círdan and Elrond and Galadriel know that the wizards, that the Istari, are coming from the west and are coming from as aid from the Valar to inspire men and elves to fight against Sauron. Eventually, this rumor kind of spreads and everyone sort of puts together that they're sent from the Valar. Now, these men take on the appearance of old men. They age very slowly. It says that they have many powers of mind and hand. And the first of these to arrive is Curanir, or Saruman. And the next is Mithrandir, or Gandalf. And the third biggest name is Radagast. And there are other wizards and Istari that come along, but these are our 3 main ones. So we learn that Saruman is closer to men, and at the beginning is giving counsel to men. Gandalf is closer with elves and Elrond and is giving counsel to them. And Radagast is talking with the birds and the bees, and he's hanging out with them, I guess. Now, Gandalf decides to go to Dol Guldur to frighten the sorcerer away, and is able to for a time, but he does eventually return, and this brings about the White Council, made up of Galadriel, Saruman, Gandalf, Elrond, and Círdan, and a few of the other elven lords. Now, Sauron is placed as leader. However, we do learn that Galadriel was really pushing for Gandalf to be the leader. But Gandalf said no, that he only wanted to have his alliance with the Valar and really only wanted to be under their allegiance and advisement, I suppose. But Sauron learns that some would have preferred Gandalf to be leader, and he's a little sour about this, and this kind of upsets him. So now we have Gandalf going back to Dol Guldur, and here he's able to confirm that this is Sauron, because again, at this point everybody kind of think, well, maybe these are the Nazgul, maybe these are the ring wraiths, and Gandalf is kind of continue to saying, like, no, I'm pretty sure this is Sauron. Like, he may not have the One Ring, but he's still growing powerful. I'm pretty sure this is him. So he goes back to Dol Guldur and confirms that, yeah, this is Sauron. And that even though he doesn't have the One Ring, he's still gaining power. He's still a powerful person. And that now he's actively searching for the ring. And Gandalf is advising everybody that, hey, we need to do something, like, right now. But Sauron is like, no, we should just wait. Let's just wait and watch to see what actually happens. Now, at this point, everybody thinks that Sauron is on their side, right? However, Sauron actually wants the ring for himself. And instead of looking at all of the history and all of the writings of Sauron to learn on how to fight against him, Saruman is actually growing in a bit of admiration for Sauron. But so instead of wanting to fight against him, he wants to obtain the One Ring for himself, believing that he can do a better job than Sauron. So now Sauron's powers are growing more in Dol Guldur because he's being left alone. And Gandalf continues to urge the White Council, like, please, we need to do something. And he's telling them, as long as the One Ring exists, even if it's lost, Sauron is still going to continue to grow in strength. And eventually Saruman's like, okay, yeah, he's getting a little too powerful. And now they go and they drive Sauron out of Mirkwood. However, this attack is a little on the late side, and the Nazgul have already begun to prepare Mordor and Barad-dûr for the return of Sauron. Now, this may sound familiar to some if you have read The Hobbit. This is our necromancer. This is who Gandalf was going back and forth. He was going to the White Council while also dealing with Bilbo and the dwarves, which makes me wonder, why in the world did you send them through Mirkwood? But whatever. So now we know that the One Ring is found again. It was taken from Anduin long ago, it says, by one of the small fisher folk. And that from here, it was taken after some time to the foot of the mountains and deep into the mountains. And here it remained for a very long time, until a little hobbit stumbled upon it and then took the ring to the western part of Eriador. And at this time, we know that the elves and men really didn't consider much of hobbits. They were just, some kind of knew about them, some kind of didn't. They were just kind of maybe myths and legends, but nobody really cared about them or took them to any consideration. And it's only by chance, obviously, that Gandalf even learns about the ring's whereabout before Sauron does. But again, Gandalf doesn't really know what to do about this, because it's kind of assumed that he probably just thought this was a lesser ring, and so he doesn't really tell anybody about it for a while. But now we're starting to get into the tale of the Lord of the Ring trilogy, and Gandalf puts together what ring this is. He realizes that the elves can't protect it, it has to be destroyed, and that it can't stay hidden forever. And here we have Sauron learning about the location of the One Ring and sending his ring wraiths and Nazgul to go and take it. Now, we also have the reforging of Narsil and Rivendell, with Aragorn now, being revealed as the heir of Isildur. And it says that he is very much alike to Elendil than anybody before him. We also have Saruman being overthrown in Isengard. And we have the great battle fought before Minas Tirith, where we have the killing of the Witch King of Angmar. Aragorn leads the armies west, and with the Dunedain and the Lords of Gondor, the King of Rohan, and all of their allies to the Black Gate of Mordor. And they are pretty sure right now that this is probably going to end in defeat. That Sauron's army is just way too large. However, Gandalf is proven right at this point when he said help will come from the hands of the weak when the wise have failed. Here we have Frodo and his trusty companion Sam traveling to Mount Doom and throwing the One Ring into the fire and destroying it. And here, finally, truly defeating Sauron. And his physical form is defeated, and his spirit becomes completely powerless. This brings on a new era in Middle-earth. Aragorn is now crowned King of Gondor and Arnor. We have the reuniting of the kingdoms. The glory of the Dunedain is restored now. The White Tree is flowering again. And while it remains the kings of Gondor never forget their past and forget all that has happened. So thanks to Gandalf, the West now is able to achieve victory, and it is now revealed that Gandalf was the one who had Naryar, the Ring of Fire, and that originally it was given to Círdan, but when the Astari arrived and he knew where they were coming from, he learned of Gandalf, trusted Gandalf, and chose to give the ring to him to protect and to use. And he believed that it would do more good in the hands of Gandalf than remaining with him. And Círdan now decides he's going to guard the Grey Havens until the last ship leaves for Valinor and Tol Eressëa. And when the power of the Elven rings have now faded and we're entering into the dominion of men, the One Ring has been destroyed, the world becomes cold and gray for the elves. And the last of the Noldor are beginning to leave Middle-earth forever, including the bearers of the 11 rings and our ring bearer of the One Ring. And they are all sailing from the Grey Havens in Círdan's ship and leave for Valinor until the world falls away and they arrive into the ancient West. So there you have it. We have now completed the Silmarillion. Oh my goodness. The emotion that I kind of had in finishing this book, I wasn't expecting. But I really enjoyed this story and tale, and just the wild journey that we joined Tolkien on the creation of Middle-earth and the events of Middle-earth, and all leading up to the dominion of men. And I hope you guys enjoyed this so much. I know I did. I've enjoyed talking with all of you guys and discussing the books and all the characters. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this so well as well. We're going to take just a short break, but we will be coming back with another book, and I'm very excited to go through this one as well with you guys. But I hope you guys have a wonderful, blessed week, and of course, may your homes be blessed with food and cheer. Bye.